Hi, Andy XL back with another NFXL podcast and another March update on the positional rankings in the 2026 NFL draft as I ramp up my draft previews. Once again, I'll remind you that if you want to know who the top candidates in each position or in each round or anything to do with the NFL draft of where these prospects might go, you'll find me the most accurate source of anybody out there, I promise you. So let's get to the wide receiver March update then. Um, so the more I look at the 2026 wide receiver draft class, the more I think there are plenty of potential good wide receivers in this class, but there is not a really true great one. And teams looking for a wide receiver to top their depth chart may do well to find him in this class. There are one or two with a chance to make it that into that person, but it's a bit thin on top end quality, I would suggest. But there's plenty of depth of good quality. Um, like I say, there are a number of good candidates with different skill sets, so it will likely come down to what skill set the wide receiver needy teams are looking for as to what order the top wide receivers go in. Right now, I have six in the top 32 on my big board, and as such, they're possible first round material. The Carnell Tate at Ohio State, who's 9 on my board. Mackay Lemon of USC is at 13. Arizona State's Jordan Tyson is at 15. Indiana's Omar Cooper at 22. Kevin Concepcion out of Texas A&M is at 26. And Denzel Washington of Washington is at 31. Now, these six basically split into two groups, outside receivers and slot guys. Tate, Tyson, and Boston are the outside guys. Lemon, Cooper, and Concepcion are more slot receiver types, although Cooper's converted to that really from in his last season at Indiana. Right, Tate, Tyson, and Boston will be competing with each other then to get the attention of teams looking for that outside receiver type. In pick order, they might be Cleveland, who have picked 6 and 24, Washington, who have picked 7, New Orleans, who have picked 8, Kansas City, who have 9 and 29, Miami 11 and 30, Baltimore 14, New York Jets 16 and 33, and Las Vegas 36. So there's 11 picks there that could be used on those guys in the first 36 of this draft. But I'm not right. But if I'm right and none of these are seen as worthy as a top 10 pick, then that's reduced to 8 and only 6 in round one because you take Cleveland at 6, Washington 7, New Orleans 8, and Kansas City 9 out of contention. So the top guy on my board is Carnell Tate. Now he's somebody who does everything well, but almost sums up this class for me in that he's a very good receiver, but he's not exceptional, is how I see him. Um, I have reservations about whether he's even the wide receiver one in this class. Tyson may be flashier than Tate and his versatility and has versatility on his side too. Of the pair, Tyson seems more likely to be a wide receiver one at the next level for me. Boston is a different type, a big physical receiver who could thrive in the red zone and against smaller backs. So he's not quite as a rounded receiver as Titan Tyson, which is why he's towards the end of round one or potentially into round two. Um, as such, Tate may be a good fit for a team who already has a good outside receiver, such as Washington, New Orleans, Kansas City, or the Jets. Tyson is a could be a good look for all of them, but would be a fit for all of the teams listed. Like I say, Boston as the bigger physical type might go late as I've already said, might go later in round one or early in round two. So the Jets have two shots at taking him with pick 16 or 33. The Chiefs at 29 could certainly use that type of receiver, especially if they're going to be getting less from the tight end position. That sort of big receiver would be useful to them as could the Raiders at pick 36, although they've got plenty at tight end for sure. Um, for the slot guys, Lemon, Cooper, and Concepcion, I doubt any of them will go in the top 10 overall. The teams who could be on the lookout for that type of wide receiver from pick 11 onwards could be the Rams at 13, the Jets at 16 and 33, Minnesota at 18, Pittsburgh at 21, Cleveland at 24, and Chicago at 25. Now, I must admit, my personal favourite in this class is Mackay Lemon. So could even see him going as the first wide receiver in this class, quite possibly. But like I say, that really depends on what type the teams are looking for. But overall, there's 7 shots for these 3 slot guys to get taken. 6 of them are in round one. I expect all 3 of these. They could well go between picks and 13 and 25 as the premier slot guys in this class. So they're the tier one guys, if you like. So let's have a look at the next tier, because after these ones where my Boston's at 31 on my big board, there is a little bit of a gap to the next guys. But I have 7 more between 45 and 67 on my big board, forming tier 2. Having already flagged up 14 teams who will be looking for wide receivers early in this draft. All 7 of these can be hopeful of filling half of those spots following the 6 that are likely to go before them. So there's 14 teams looking for wide receivers. In the first 2 tiers, I've got 13 here. So they should all be hopeful of getting a spot. In terms of type of receiver and where they stand on my big board, here's how I see it. At 45 is Alabama's Jeremy Bernard. He's a versatile guy, good at intermediate routes, probably a solid wide receiver too at the next level. At 53 on my big board is the next slot guy, Zachariah Branch, who's a real speedster, but he'll be looked at as a slot receiver. Then right next to him on the board is 54 Antonio Williams out of Clemson. He's somebody I've described as a savvy slot receiver. He just plays the position very well. 56 is Malachi Fields, Notre Dame. Big receiver, red zone threat. So potentially he's the one that teams might go over after if they missed out on Boston. Chris Bell of Louisville is at 60 on my big board. Another big body guy is very good at yards of the catch for him. Once he's got it in his hands, he can do stuff. At 62 is Chris Brazzell out of Tennessee. He's a tall receiver, slender, deep threat, but probably not as quick as others in this class. But definitely a deep threat. He can use his size to box people out downfield. Elijah Sarah is at 68 out of Indiana. Another, a bit like Bernard, intermediate routes and very polished, but probably less of a ceiling, less development in him than others in this class. So they're the next backs that are going to be competing. So as with the first group, these could go in pretty much any order depending on what skill set teams are particularly looking for. But as I've said, all 7 have a shot at getting into round 2, and all of these should be gone by mid-round 3 in all likelihood as it looks at the moment. So let's look on to the final tier I'm going to look at, tier 3. Right, 13 gone. I still think there are at least 5 or 6 more decent landing spots available to this group, especially with those teams in need of maybe 2 wide receivers in this draft, like Cleveland, Washington, Atlanta, Miami, and the Jets. Those teams may not have wanted to take 2 wide receivers very early, so could come back for the second one from this group. I have 8 in this group who appear between 83 and 128 on my current big board. The guy at 83 is Bryce Lance out of North Dakota. Yep, Trey's little brother. He had a superb combine, and he's an outside threat on the intermediate to deep routes, not so good on the shorter routes. Dion Burks is 87 out of Oklahoma, good athlete, versatile, possible deep threat. 98 is Ted Hurst out of Georgia State, big and speedy, like Lance, is going to be an intermediate to deep threat. 99 is DeZorn Stribling out of Ole Miss, outside, very good at contested catches, and another strength of his is his run blocking, which again, a team looking for somebody who can help them out in that regard will be drawn to him, possibly in round 3, round 4 sort of territory. At 103 is Brennan Thompson in Mississippi State, another outside receiver, small but exceptionally quick. So, he's going to have to beat people with speed rather than size. 106 is Jacoby Lane of USC, a different type to Thompson in that he's another outside receiver, but a tall, deep threat. 109 is Skylar Bell of Connecticut, did great in the jump tests at the combine. Another versatile type, so could be useful to teams looking for that wide receiver 2/3 guy. And the final one I've got in here is Josh Cameron of Baylor, who's the next slot guy. So if we've looked at the first 2 tiers, we've basically got 5 slot guys there. So if somebody's missed out on all of those, there's nobody in this tier 3 that's a slot guy. So I've added Cameron in, even though he's 128 on my big board. He's built like a running back and will deliver yards after the catch. He just runs over people basically once he's got the ball in his hands. And he's been very useful for Baylor. So Burks and Lane have been on the slide on my big board, but the other six are all on the rise generally. So there is certainly room for, once again, these to go in pretty much any order come draft time. As I said, I squeezed Cameron into the group as he's the only slot type, and as such, is the sixth slot in this class. And I think there's 8 teams out there looking for a slot receiver right now. These three tiers give you up to 21 wide receivers in this class, as I see them, and really the only ones with a serious chance of getting taken on the first 2 days of the draft as we stand right now. Although one other name I would throw out there after a superb combine, he's currently number 182 on my board, is Jeff Caldwell of Cincinnati. He's got a blend of great size, massive wingspan, and he's got superb speed, as he showed at the combine. And he's one teams may well see as one who could do well for them with a late third or a late third round pick, or on early day 3, i.e., round 4. And then, of course, we still have the likes of Joan Jennings, Stefan Diggs, and Deebo Samuel looking for work too. So if any of them land with wide receiver needy teams that I've mentioned prior to the draft, that could reduce the 18 good openings for wide receivers in this draft. But I still think we could see anything up to 20, maybe even more, taken in the first 2 days in what is a really deep class in terms of good quality, but probably lacks in elite talent. So that's how I see the wide receiver class right now. Next up for me in this trawl through the positions in March will be the running backs. See you soon.